had the blessing of being able to start or found CBL. So my freshman year, I had really wanted to join an organization in the business school that was a Christian business organization, but there wasn't really one that was what I was looking for. So spring semester, started just praying about kind of what God wanted me to do, and God had kind of put it on my heart to think about starting CBL. I had two brothers who went to A&M, and one of them was in the CBL at A&M, so that's kind of how I'd heard about that. But through a long process, was able to kind of get all the documents and everything started over the summer. There was another guy who I had asked to help kind of co-direct with me over the summer, and so we kind of worked on getting all the legalistic side of CBL formed with the Constitution and everything, which is a very long process, as Rebecca's found out with all the revising and everything. So we got kind of all that taken care of during the summer. Met with the CBL A&M co-directors just to figure out kind of how in the world to start an organization, what that looks like, what's worked for them, because going into it, had no idea how to start an organization or if it would work or if people would be interested. But at the end of the summer, we almost had all the documents done. I think we finished it all kind of mid-semester. And then he actually couldn't do it anymore right when we had finished all of that. He was going to intern for accounting in the spring semester and do his internship. So it actually almost died off. I couldn't find anybody that was really interested at the time to really help me kind of get it going. And honestly, at that point, had felt kind of defeated and really kind of unsure where to go at that point. And then over Christmas break, one of my roommates had said, "Hey, have you texted or asked Sarah Weber?" I don't know if some of you might know her. You might remember her. If she'd be interested. And so I texted Sarah. And honestly, this was going to be my last attempt at getting CBL off the ground before I was just going to okay, I guess it's not going to happen, because I only had one more semester before I graduated at that point. And Sarah said she was interested, told me she had a friend named Rebecca Rodriguez that would also be interested. And then Ashley Wooldridge, she was just transferring in that semester, and I had known her, my cousin Kelsey, and her really best friends growing up, so I texted her too to see if she was interested. And so the four of us kind of got together after Christmas break and just started talking about it, and they all wanted to help out, so we just slowly started building kind of what it would look like, how to get people interested, how to market with chalking, and just figuring out kind of how to tell people about CBL. And it really, I think we ended the semester with 13 members, which we only had maybe 5 people attending regularly each meeting. Libby can testify. But it was really, honestly, being here, seeing that it's still alive and going is super encouraging and super kind of cool to see God's faithfulness in that. But it really taught me a lot of perseverance, because it took basically 2 years from when I started praying about it before we actually had an official first meeting. So it definitely taught me a lot of perseverance, which has helped in the business world, a lot of faithfulness and trusting God that if he really wants something to happen, he'll make it happen. It may not happen in our timing or the way that we expect it to, but just it really has helped me in the business world, just knowing hey, God is faithful. And even with the position that I'm going into, just seeing God's faithfulness in that and just trusting his plan for all that. It really, during those 2 years of forming CBL and just getting all of it started, I think has played a big role in learning learning all that. So kind of a very quick version of what that looked like. Was there another question? Or was that all of it?
That was good. Daniel?
Cool, yeah. So my name's Daniel Grzini. I was a finance major here at Baylor. I started in 2013 and I graduated in December of 16, so 3.5 years for me. And now, like Rebecca said, I work in finance at American Airlines. Specifically, I'm in the flight service group, so everything that my team does, we support the flight attendants. So there, I'm in charge of all of our operating expense projects. I deal with our what we pay for the flight attendant uniforms and the meals that the flight attendants eat on the plane. Are three of the big things I do. At CBL, how I got started was in my last semester here, or actually I'll back up. So my main group involvement most of the time I was at Baylor was on the Club Ultimate team. That's where I had met most of my friends, and really put all my time and effort into trying to be really good at that. And then my last semester of junior year, beginning of senior year, they're kind of mixed from graduating early. I stopped doing that just to work. So I started working at the In-N-Out Burger here just to have a little spending money. And then my last semester at Baylor, I was like, okay, I've played a sport and I've spent time working, but what have I really done here? What have I done that's meaningful? And so I really wanted to join a group that was going to have some kind of more of a long-lasting impact than throwing a piece of plastic into an end zone. So I really just found out about it by reading an email, which I never did in college. I saw there was an interest meeting, so I showed up, and I thought the group was really cool, and then got involved. And in the one semester I was part of CBL, I was the executive director of member development, which was really cool because I got to just help with a lot of the high-level planning of what we wanted the group to look like, where we wanted it to go, and then specifically when we were going to have the lessons, what we wanted to talk about in those meetings, which was really cool. So to transition to what has CBL meant for me, one of the ways that it has meant a lot to me is there have been multiple times where I found myself in a situation where the lessons or talks that I did, I go back to them wow, that really applied to me. Here I was sharing this with other people, and now they're super applicable in my life. As well as, like I said too, at the time I was just really looking for a group to be involved in that was a lot of moral people who had the same goals kind of thing, which is what I found in CBL, and is something that I know we hope continues past CBL, that even while you're in it and then when you graduate too, it becomes more a network of those kind of people. That's my side.
So now that y'all hopefully know Ashley and Daniel's life story, well, at least a little bit, what we really want is to make this a lot more conversational, and make this, this is such a treat, I think, and so unique, because we have the opportunity to talk to people coming from CBL who have who are like-minded, who view the workplace as a place to glorify and serve the Lord, and be a witness there. But I think you'll learn it looks very differently for both of them. So takes us to the first question, and that is, how has going into the workforce provided you with opportunities to be a witness, and what has that looked like?
All right. Yeah, I'll go first. So for me, there's a lot of opportunity for that, because American Airlines is a secular company, and it's a very large company, and so it's one where we're trying to change the culture of the company, but it's fitting in with wherever the social norms of the country are going. So for example, if there's something that comes up, the company tries to align itself with that. So I guess where I'm going with that is there's nothing inherently Christian about American Airlines. And even besides my mom, who also works at American, from the people I know who are mostly finance people there, it's too bad to say this, but I couldn't say like this one person who I work with or who I know is a Christian. So my one of my bosses is kind of on the line. He's a guy who like every now and then will say things, but I don't know anyone who really lives it all the time. And so there's a lot of opportunity there too, because it's different going from being in Baylor and everyone else around you went to Baylor, goes to Baylor, then you go now to another company and you carry the Baylor name with you, and it almost doesn't sound real, I think, while you're in school, but then you kind of like the stereotype of whatever people think Baylor is what they like put on you too. And so I'm not sure if that makes it harder or easier to share, actually, because it's almost like whatever kind of stereotype you carry with you from where you went to school, and for all of us it's Baylor, it's like they expect you to be that. So for me, when I like say that I am a Christian or talk about morals or values or things that I care about, they expect it. And so I don't want to say it doesn't carry weight, but it's almost like less of a surprise to them, because they'll be like, oh, you went to Baylor, like of course you're like that, or that kind of thing. But I mean, the opportunity is still there too, because like even though no one I work with on my team or in my group is Christian, like they're all still really nice people, which is interesting too. So everyone I work with, I love my team. They're super nice and super friendly, and yet at the same time knowing that they're lost. And a lot of them, from the levels I know them, or just from anyone looking at them on the outside looking in, it's like they're doing fine. Like we're all kind of, at least on my team. So my manager's 34. There's a lady on my team who's 35, and then the other 3 on the team are all just finished undergrad, 25, 22, 22. And so we're like all, from the outside doing well, just finished school, got a new job, but it's hard to know that like they're nice, they're friendly, they're happy with their lives, but at the same time they're lost. So I guess my overall point with that is when you do leave Baylor and you go wherever, you do carry that name with you, and people will have that expectation of you, because you came from a school that is proud to be Christian, that they'll expect that from you.
Yeah, so my work environment a little bit different. So since I work in a Christian company, pretty much everybody there is a Christian, or it's supposed to be. So I mean, we talk about God very frequently, and it's very open. Like obviously, since we mainly work with like churches and ministers and pastors and hospitals. So even like on the phones, people, like I'll have pastors ask me like, hey, is there anything I can pray for you about? So it's a very, very different environment. My more opportunity that I've found that I have there, because there's not as much opportunity to witness there since pretty much everyone's a believer, has been just how can I encourage people. So not even just with my coworkers, but like even with the people that I talk to on the phones, because we'll talk to a lot of people who are going through really hard times, and just having that opportunity. I mean, we're allowed to, if we feel led to, like pray for them over the phone, like we can do that, or just even being able to like say an encouraging word to them, or just be someone to listen to, which can be hard in like my environment to like take the time to like stop and listen to them. But sometimes like when you do that, and like the impact that even that like little thing can make for somebody, makes a huge difference. And they'll even say that. But like with my coworkers, really just being encouraging to them, but also like a light to them. So I go to Watermark in Dallas, and they had a kind of applying of how to be a Christian in the business world. They were talking about like they're doing a relationship series of like your relationship in regards to work and what we think of that. but they did one a couple weeks ago, and it was talking about how people tend to have this kind of stereotype when you go to work on Monday, like, oh, it's a Monday, and everyone kind of dragging your feet into work. But he reminded us hey, our work is a form of worship for God. It's not something that we just have to do, but we should be excited to go to work. I know it's kind of weird thinking because y'all are still in school and work's kind of, I don't know, for me at least when I was in school, it's oh, work, I don't know, it's very different kind of mindset when you're in school. But then when you do start working and you kind of get just into your kind of routine, and you're just okay, going to work. But it's so easy to get dragged into that, oh, it's Monday, going to work, oh, I wish the weekend was longer. But then just having that kind of renewed reminder of hey, it should be a joy for us to get to go to work and for us to be able to serve the people around us, and that is a form of worship for God, and that he loves it when we do it. So it's not just a mundane thing that we do every day, but it's hey, if you're doing it kind of with our, I guess, the kind of main verse for CPL, but if you're working as though you're serving the Lord and everything that you're doing, you will find joy in that because you're doing it for God. And kind of fun side fact, they did their kind of thing that left from our service that week was, how people always say TGIF, thank God it's Friday thing. He's we should have a TGIM, thank God it's Monday. And honestly, if you have, even with school, I'm sure some Mondays, if y'all have classes Monday mornings, you don't really want to wake up and go to school. Or at least I was guilty of that. But even just having that mindset of hey, it's Monday, we get to go to school, we get to go to work, and how can we worship God throughout our days instead of being oh, it's a Monday. But sorry, kind of sidetracked there. But yeah, so that's a very different work environment, but feel very blessed to be in that environment.
So I think it's really interesting. Both very different environments, but the story is similar. I mean, we can draw connections from both because y'all both have the same, being inside y'all, and so it really is kind of that wherever you are, Ashley, you were saying, how can I encourage someone? Mm-hmm. It's kind of this, again, being God's hands and feet wherever we are. So I have some questions, and I want to just kind of keep this rolling, this conversation, because I think work as worship and viewing it that way, and then viewing Mondays in the way that we see things. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of we see a Monday maybe as more of a drag because we don't see maybe even the eternal significance within the value of the day, and so then that takes us to, well, then where do we find our satisfaction? Because I'm sure, Daniel, you've had times in that environment that it's been really hard to be a light. So where have y'all learned to find y'all satisfaction, and what have y'all done practically to do that in business?
So I'll start first, and I'll start a step back and say when you work with people, it kind of becomes evident what they do to find satisfaction, and so there are some people who maybe are more lost, and so maybe what it is they're trying to be super successful at work, and so whether it's a distraction from what's going on in their personal life, or they're just trying to find something to feel proud of, they'll just become near workaholics and just try to do super well there. There are other people who go to work just so they can collect their paycheck and then go have fun on the weekends, or just to make a living, and they just want to spend their time with their family or something like that. So whether it's good or bad, like a good or bad thing where people find their satisfaction, I think it for me, where I've tried to do it is it kind of does go hand in hand with what we talked about of how using work kind of as your springboard to like promoting Christ to others. You have to be content with where you're at and what you've been given, and like the challenges or the opportunities that you have to be a Christian right then and there. So, for me right now, one of the situation that a lot of finance at American is going through right now is, for us, there's not a whole lot of like work-life balance. It's on any given day I could be staying late, and if you don't find out about it till that day, that's like kind of not very fun if you're planning on like going to do something with a friend after work, but next thing you know you're there till 8 that night. So if it where I'm going with that, since that leads to a lot of people in finance at American not being super happy with our situation, even though a lot of us love our job, and I do love my job at American. But if there's that kind of just that tough atmosphere to work in, and like I said, with not having like other Christians that I know in finance at American, for me it's tough because I spend all these hours at work, yet I can't really like vent to my coworkers in the same way that I could like other Christians if I knew them at work, or I can't really have the same type of like conversations on like, oh, I'm struggling with this right now, like will you just like kind of be my community and come around me when things are tough at work, just because that's not the other people who I'm surrounded with. So for me, satisfaction almost has to be accepting the challenge that it is that the spot where I am is a lot of opportunity to witness and to be the example and to be Christ to other people, and then to my support, so my community, my other people who are going to come around me as brothers and sisters in Christ, like that's not going to come from work for me. So I've got to make sure I've got that from the outside, that I'm not like looking for it at work. We're trying to find that type of fulfillment at work, because for me that's like it is a mission field every single day, in the big things and the little things.
Yeah, for me, I would definitely say, I've struggled a lot, especially like growing up with comparison, like comparing, since I'm the youngest, like comparing with my older brothers just growing up, but even like when I started work, like that was actually one thing I had really struggled with, of just comparing myself, because I work in currently I'm more in like a call center type environment, but you can see like how many calls people have taken, like how long their calls have been, but you can see that all on like one page. So it's so easy, or it's so easy to be able to like compare yourself of like if you're on longer calls, or if you haven't taken as many as someone else, or that was actually something like I struggled with a lot when I first started working there, and I had to like slowly work on changing my perspective about it and changing my my view of where I was getting my satisfaction, of not necessarily from numbers, but just from like, hey, am I serving the people that I'm talking to the best of my ability, or am I just trying to like move on to the next person and maybe not give them all the information that they would need? So I've had to really learn to kind of change my perspective on that and learn how to find my satisfaction in like if this was me, like how would I want someone to be serving me, or like how would I want, or like even if like if it was my like thinking like if I was talking to like my mom or my dad or like my grandparents, like how would I want to like serve them in that way? So really changing it more from like a comparison perspective of just like, hey, if I was serving them, or if like God was watching me and like knowing like everything I was doing, just to make sure that I was really honestly like honoring God in how I was doing my work, and making it less about me and more about the other person on the other side of the phone, and just knowing that like, hey, that person right now is more important than a number, Like, and sometimes it is like taking the time, like I was saying earlier, taking the time to talk to them a little more, because we'll get people who call in who have, you know, just lost their mom or just lost their mom and dad, or just some like really sad situations, and sometimes they just need time to talk. So not really just learning to not compare myself, not have that like number in my head as much. And it's still hard to, I mean, it's still something that I struggle with a little bit, but it's helped me kind of change my perspective on how I look at it and where I actually get my satisfaction from work. And it's easy to, since I do work in a Christian environment, I do have like a couple girls there that I'm closer to that I can talk to, like, you don't have that, but like I can actually go to and like talk to them about it when I'm struggling, or kind of encourage them, or them encourage me, like when we are going through hard times. So it's nice to have that too.
Wow. Well, I would like to take the opportunity to open it up to anyone who has questions. And it could be to both of them or to one of them. Yeah, it's open. So.
Right, so I was part of the LLC.
Oh, you were?
I'm also part of the men's education team. So I feel like if I
Nice.
could find
Man.
I graduated 3 years earlier. I don't know if you guys know this, but
Yeah.
so for Ashley, I have a question for both of you. But for Ashley, how do you think the Living Learning community has shaped or influenced you in, I guess, or shaped your future, helped you succeed? And how has playing, on the Ultimate Frisbee team, did you just do that on the side, or do you think it also helped you prepare you for the industry?
Yeah.
Who are you asking first?
Ashley.
Okay, you said for Lead LLC, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I learned a lot from so in Lead you have to take certain classes, like leadership classes too. So I actually learned a lot from that, of just how to like build my leadership skills. But also just learning, because I was in Lead for 2 years, so my freshman and then sophomore/junior year squished. But I feel like Lead really helped me, well, one, learn how to develop my leadership skills, my relational skills, how to be more comfortable kind of talking in front of groups. I actually led their service team, or I was on their service team, so I got to like lead some service projects, which really helped. I think a lot of it helped actually in preparing for like how to build CBL and kind of found CBL, just because I got to have that leadership experience, figure out how to kind of facilitate events, how to kind of rally people together and get people passionate about something. But yeah, obviously the leadership skills go so far in the work world and kind of in a lot of aspects of your life, but it did help a lot with that.
To make sure I remember your question, so how did the Ultimate team, like, how did it like help me in like my work life now?
Or not your work life, like how did it? Yeah, well, right.
Okay. So there are two things that come to my mind. One is on the Ultimate team, I met my two best friends at Baylor, and ended up both of those guys were my roommates. And had the three of us not been on the Ultimate team, we wouldn't have met. One was a math major, one was a business major, but we never had classes together, so we wouldn't have met. And so one way, just that you're with those guys 3+ times a week, or on the tournament weekends, like you see each other the entire weekend. And so those two friendships that I have from that, I'm still super close to those guys. When I am struggling with something at work or my own personal life, those are usually the two guys who I text first and be like, hey, will you all pray for me about this, or something like that. The other way that I think the Ultimate team helped was, so for me, just not being like the typical Ultimate player. They're a bunch of like really fast, skinny kids for the most part, which wasn't me. I was a defensive lineman when I played high school football, and so to be really good at Ultimate, I had to like have the work ethic to like be running and stay in shape all the time. and to tie that into how it helps with work is like that was a daily thing. Like I had to work at it all the time, and how I think that relates is especially when you come into a new job, like you have like the background of finance that I got all from Baylor, but even though I've been now at American there for 13 months, I really feel like almost my first 12 months were still learning how to do my job really well. And so it's to do that well, and I would even say to like have your manager really appreciate what you're doing as a new hire, be having the attitude that you're going to go in and you're going to like work really hard every day, because you know, like the lady who's on my team who's been there for 3 years, whenever she has like a new project or something, like she does it like really fast because she's been there long enough, and she's worked in finance like 11 years to know what she's doing, versus when I get something, especially in the beginning when it's new, you've got to be willing to put the work in and sometimes put the hours in, and just like the mentality of the effort to get where you want to go.
Next question.
I've got one for Daniel, actually. So you had mentioned how, like, American Airlines being a secular company, they typically align their company's views with whatever is viewed as being politically correct, which isn't necessarily what we as Christians view as being, like, morally correct. So I guess kind of two parts to that. Like, one, does the company ever, like, push that on you? And like two, how does that affect the way you would like interact with your coworkers, and just like how does that affect your day-to-day life in the company, knowing you don't necessarily agree with what they might stand for in certain cases?
Yeah. So I think this will help if I give like an actual example. So like I said, the finance team that I'm on, we support all our flight attendants, which is like it attracts a certain type of person, like, right? So I would not be as good at being a flight attendant as someone who is a flight attendant. The people who are flight attendants would probably not be as good at doing a finance job as I am. It's just different personalities and different skill sets. However, for example, most of the men who are flight attendants are gay. And as a Christian, I don't think that's something that the Bible says is right. And however, like the groups that I work with, even though I don't work with flight attendants a lot, one of the business units I guess I support is a lot of people who were flight attendants. And so there'll just be, you know, and I'm close enough with some of them, like we're friends on Facebook, and so just like the different types of things we post, or to them saying how they spent their weekend, or like if a conversation does come up, like what you think about something, the tough part when, so like American, for example, is like trying to be a leader in the LBGT area, and like being super open to everything, and like you can do what you want. And so like, you know, there's never been a time where I felt like the company like shames me because my views don't necessarily align with the company's. But where it is hard is where if people know you're a Christian, and if you've like made clear what you believe, okay, so now you're in the point where you've got to work with this person, and like you want to have a good working relationship with them, hopefully a good personal relationship as well. And at the same time, like how do you like love them as a person, but at the same time be very clear about like we don't agree with this here. And so that's it's tough. It's really tough, honestly. It's something I'm still learning. But I guess if I had to say the best way that I've tried to do that so far is it almost like requires for you to get to know people better, and to have the deeper relationships with them, because you know if I just go on Facebook, to use this example again, and if I were to say like I think it's a sin if you're gay, kind of thing, for maybe if some of the people I work with who live that lifestyle see that, they're gonna look at me and say like, oh, he's judgmental, he's closed-minded, and because I've try to make it clear that I'm a Christian, they're going to go, okay, well, Christians are closed-minded, they're judgmental. Since people know I'm from Baylor, they're going to say, like, oh, Christians who come from Baylor are closed-minded and judgmental. So you can't just, like throw out that you disagree with something. Like, you really have to, like, make the effort to get to know other people, and, like, just like, you know, Jesus came and spent time with the sinners. Like, you've got to be loving to other people, to, like, Christian or not, in the way that Christ would, to kind of give you that, foundation's not the word I want to use, but the credibility of, they understand, like, okay, this person who's a Christian doesn't believe the same thing as me, but, like, they still respect me as a person, and they're not trying to, like, beat me over the head about it or something. It's tough.
Yeah.
So we have time for one more question.
Have you come across, both of you, any ethical issues and how did you handle them?
Yeah, go first.
Do you have a specific one in your head?
I'm still trying to think of it.
So I don't know that I've come across a specific ethical issue. One interesting thing that I think relates that I've noticed as a full-time employee versus when I was an intern, because I was also an intern at American, is how work politics is such a thing there. I mean, and I'm sure this is the same at any company, and anything I say that, like, sounds like it's negative about American, again, don't take that as I don't like my company. I absolutely love working for American. But I mean, there are sometimes it's like, I'm the youngest one in the room, here I am working with all these adults, and it's like a junior high locker room for people, like, saying things behind other people's back, or trying to get ahead of someone else, or trying to point the blame, you know, trying to, like, protect themselves so they don't take any of the fault if something did go wrong. So I guess, how do you handle it? I mean, one is, I think, do a good job, and this is hard too, of not including yourself when, like, your coworkers are just, like, gossiping. And gossiping sounds really bad, and sometimes it's hard to draw the line sometimes. Like, are you just, like, talking about things that are going on, like, that your team's facing, or is it, you know, if you think about it a little more, is it like, okay, this is a situation that's come up, but maybe it's kind of personal to someone else, and maybe us talking about it, like, isn't super respectful of the other person or the other team or whatever. So, one, being mindful of the conversations that you're in, and, like, what you're saying in them, like, if you're actively participating, or two, even if you're just, like, in the area when people are talking about it. And why that came to mind is, like, a couple weeks ago, I was having lunch with my team, and this other person came and had lunch with us. And he's a person who's several levels higher than me at American, and I, like, work with his team a lot, and I want to get to know him better. And so, like, I asked him, like, hey, do you want to get lunch just one-on-one one day? And he's like, oh, I'd love to. It's like, I want to get to know you better too, and, like, I loved catching up on the work gossip with you. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, that hurts. Like, I don't want to be known for that. And so I wouldn't say I actively participated in anything that he's thinking of in the conversation, but even just being at the same lunch table when a group of us were there, guilty by association, I guess. So work gossip was one. I had another one in my head. I don't remember it, so I'll let Ashley go. And if I think of it, I'll get back to it.
The main thing I actually thought of was also kind of the gossip aspect, because since I am in a Christian environment, most of our kind of morals and the way we think typically line up. But it still can be easy to, like, find yourself in a conversation where it turns from conversation to more of that gossip aspect, which is hard, because it's hard to find that balance sometimes of what is just conversation and then what is when it turns into gossip. So I think it is kind of like what Daniel was saying, being really careful about kind of what you're saying, and just making sure that, like, what you're saying isn't being negative towards somebody else. Like, even if sometimes you think maybe it's, like, a fact that you're stating, or even I guess even being careful to like complain in a sense, because sometimes we'll like talk about like different people we talk to on the phone, it's just like funny stories, but then being careful not to let that turn into like bashing on people, and not like purposely doing it, but then just sometimes you feel like it starts kind of going that direction, of just like these like weird conversations that happen, or just like how sometimes people will respond, but turning those into like, oh, I have a story, but then it's more of like we're gossiping about those people and really bashing these people, which you have to, I mean, you just have to be careful of kind of how, of your conversation, how you're wording things, and what you, I guess like what perspective you're kind of giving off to people. Because even like, even around Christians, like it's hard, like groups of people, like gossip happens so often, so frequently about everybody. So just being careful with who you're having those conversations with, and just making sure that you're not, like if you like notice in the moment that you're, because even sometimes like I'll notice in the moment that like, oh, I'm talking bad about this person, I shouldn't be, of just like either changing the conversation or even just like apologizing in the moment and being like, hey, I'm sorry, like we shouldn't be talking about this, or I don't mean to bash this person, like I don't want to talk bad about them. But like if you recognize it, to be like willing to accept what you've done, and not being prideful in a sense of not wanting to say like, hey, that was wrong, I shouldn't have done that. Or even if, and this hasn't happened to me, but if it goes to like an extent of where it was like really bad, like I mean, even sometimes I feel like sometimes it is better to even go to like the person that you were talking about sometimes, and being willing to like apologize to that person for what. I haven't done that at work. I think I've done that with like a personal, more personal relationship with like a friend, but just being willing to humble yourself in those situations. And I think that also says a lot about you and who you are when you're able to do that, because a lot of people won't want to do that just because we have such high pride, that we don't want to admit that we've done something wrong, or that we've, in a sense, like, well, sinned in that matter. But yeah, I would kind of encourage all with that. But it's hard. It's not easy.
And I do remember my other example. It's not necessarily an ethical issue, but it relates, and I think it's something that could be good for y'all to hear too. And so it kind of relates to what we were talking to. When I started off with, like, one of the things is like no one, like, or a lot of people like don't want to take blame for something. They'd rather just push it off to someone else. Like, you don't want to be guilty of like the one who made the mistake or something like that. So a lot of times, like, say something does go wrong, or there was a mistake in a presentation or something like that, it's people will like say, like, try to talk themselves out of it and say, just in ways to say that it wasn't their fault. And like, ironically, today at work, I made my first pretty big mistake. We were like presenting this package that we had put together to. So in the room there was myself, there were like 2 managers, so they have 5 to 10 people under them. There was their boss, so my director, who has like 20 people under her. And then there were 4 managing directors and a vice president in the room. So those other 5 people have literally thousands of people who report to them. So they're kind of high up in the company. And so we're going through this package, and we're on like 2 pages, if the word package isn't making sense, PowerPoint, I guess, we've got it printed out. And we're going through 2 pages, and all of a sudden, like, a number on one doesn't tie to a number on the other. And the vice president, who's in the room, notices the mistake. And it's significant because it relates to like this labor issue that the company is trying to do a lot better on, because we just don't have a good handle on it as a company, and it's costing us a lot of money. And so, like, even though like the mistake of the numbers not tying together didn't cost us any money, now all of a sudden it's like one group looks like they've done worse to their VP, and others look like they've done better. And I'm the one who messed up the numbers, because like in the Excel version before I made it a PDF, a formula that I did just missed a couple numbers, and so that was not fun. But the reason I go through all that to say is, so like afterwards I went back, I found what I did, I like fixed the formula, and then I like sent the email to my bosses, so my 2 managers and the director, and just said like, hey, this was totally on me. It wasn't the other person in the room or the other person who kind of worked on the same pages. She got her part right. Like, I messed it up. I realized how it made other people look bad, and I'm like, sorry that I made like y'all and our whole finance team look bad to like a vice president kind of thing, which is very different than how a lot of people would have handled it. And like, you know, an hour later when my director read that, she was like, hey, like, yeah, that was pretty bad. Like, don't do it again. I know you're going to do a better job like next time. It's a great learning opportunity, but I really appreciate you owning up to it and taking the responsibility, and that like shows a lot of maturity. So again, ethical issue, I don't know if it falls into that, but I mean, if you do mess up, like taking responsibility for it and like admitting it right away, not waiting for someone else to find it.
Well, give them a round of applause for being here. So, if y'all want to stay seated, I mean, I don't know, or y'all can stand up. But I want to take this opportunity to pray over, the ministry, like the place where the Lord has placed y'all, and just kind of, bless y'all, because y'all have blessed us tonight, and we're just really thankful for y'all making the trip down to Waco, Texas this day. So, Heavenly Father, God, we just want to thank you for this time that you have planned, that you have just ordained for us to be here and to learn from those who have come before us, and those who carry passion for your name to be known in business. Father, I thank you for Ashley, and I thank you for Daniel and the ways that you are moving in their lives, the ways that you are bringing things to mind that aren't what everyone else thinks or feels. Father, I just pray blessing upon blessing over their work life. God, that you would use it, greatly to your glory, but also to their lives as a whole, that you would draw them closer to you every day when they step into that building, into their office space, Father, that you would just encourage them, that you would pour out your love over them, and that they would know that they have a little family here at Baylor who is praying for them and who is encouraged by their testimony that they came to tell today. Father, continue to work in and through those who have come through CBL, those who are in CBL, and those who are to come in CBL. May it be to your glory always, and may we keep our eyes fixed on you through this journey called life. Honor. In the name of Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.